Welcome everybody to our bi-weekly webinar or information webinar on cryopreservation, on biostasis, and on what we as Tomorrow Biostasis do. There's going to be two parts. First part, half an hour for everybody who has not been involved in this topic for long and might not know everything about it. I give a quick introduction about the most important considerations and most important pieces of information about the topic, and then the main part should be mostly a Q&A. Please use the YouTube chat to ask any questions you might have. I'm more than happy to discuss whatever you might be interested in. And then, of course, last but not least, we're more than happy to also talk to anybody who's interested in person and discuss this topic one-on-one, either with one of my colleagues or with me, to dig deeper. And of course, if anybody is interested in signing up, either with us or also in other countries with potentially other organizations, since we are only able to serve Europe and only do serve Europe, also feel free to reach out. We're more than happy to discuss and help in any way possible. But for the time being, I would dig or go directly into it and give you a quick introduction on the topic of biostasis and cryopreservation, or cryonics, how it's sometimes called. Briefly about me, so I'm a medical doctor by training, have been involved in this longevity and life extension field for many years now, as a doctor, as a cancer researcher. And I did a bit of a detour over the last couple of years in building tech companies here based in Berlin, in Germany. And then now, since a couple of years, I'm back in on kind of my real passion, which is this topic of life extension and longevity with a company and an organization and a foundation targeting or offering biostasis and cryopreservation as a service. As I just mentioned, I'm the founder and CEO of Tomorrow Biostasis, which is an operative cryopreservation provider based in Berlin, in Germany, but with multiple teams all over Europe. That covers Europe with high quality cryopreservation service. And then I'm also the president of the board of a non-profit foundation which is based in Switzerland, called European Biostasis Foundation, which is a research foundation for this whole topic. First of all, let's start with the problem, right? I mean, most of you are probably aware that cryopreservation or biostasis or longevity is a topic for those people who are interested or even have already decided that they would like to live significantly longer than is currently medically possible, right? People who would like not to age and not unfortunately die to any type of disease that, of course, currently there's still a large amount of diseases that are not curable and that unfortunately ultimately will lead to death. And of course, it's not only a problem for old people, right? It's not only that everybody dies at 85 or 90 or whatever it might be, but unfortunately, also a large amount of young, even children, die relatively early. And while of course not everybody in this call, in this video chat or this webinar today might be at 80 or 70, where of course more diseases are prevalent. Unfortunately, it's still a risk that even when you're younger, you have any type of, get any type of cancer, whatever it might be. And even though, of course, the probability of that is not super high, unfortunately, it happens once in a while. And then last but not least, I just mentioned like not everybody lives till 85. What's very important, very few people live till 85, right? Only 1% currently around reach the age of 85. And then the higher the years go, the lower the probability, of course, is. So, but first of all, of course, it's not unimportant to ask, okay, so why would anybody even want to live longer, right? And in the people who talk to us or who are our members or are interested in signing up, there's a plethora of motivations why people are interested in it. Most of them are just like life, right? They would like to live longer, to experience more, to do more things, and also because, well, they just enjoy the day-to-day process of life. So generally, very life positive. Then there's a group of people who, and of course, all these motivations are not either ors, right? a good amount of people are interested in multiple, even more than one or even all of these motivations, right? The second part here that we see quite often is that people are just very interested in seeing the future, right? What will be possible in the future, how technology will advance, how society will look in the future, and so on and so on. And then last but not least, there's a group of people who believe that if people are able to live longer and have a vested interest in how the world will look in the future, how society will work, how climate change will impact the world, and so on, that at that point, if everybody sees them personally being around in the future, that as a second order effect creates a better future, right? Because people are personally invested in that very future, because, well, it would affect them. No matter what the motivation is, or if all of those apply to you or just one of them, these are the things that we usually hear. And of course, where the topic of longevity and life extension might be a solution. I think for people who think about this topic for the first time, or have not looked at all the information that is out there, I think it's always very important that, of course, this is nor longevity, nor not life extension, nor longevity, and also not biostasis. It's about being kept alive by any means, right? It's always about living your life, with physical and mental, with full mental and physical capabilities, just longer, right? That's very, very important to always remember. The second thing, of course, if you think about this the first time, then this topic might feel, a bit uncommon, right? Like something where you even need to decide if this is something that should exist to a degree, right? And of course, it's not a topic that is very common right now. So this is very much a pioneer market. But I think it's always important to remember as a second point that what is normal does not necessarily mean it's good, right? So let's say you talk to your family or your friends and they're like, dude, this is not normal, right? What the fuck? Then this does not really mean much, right? Like normal does really not mean good. And of course, what isn't normal in the past might be very normal now, and what used to be normal in the past is not normal right now. So these things are just not really correlated to each other. And then very important, of course, for this topic, because it used to be somewhere between science fiction and science, and has over the last year moved way closer and continues to move way closer towards science and medical practice, is always to keep in mind that what used to be medically or generally impossible in the past then becomes standard procedure very, very quick. The image you saw here on the left for the last 3 slides is always a good reminder. When I talk to my colleagues who are doctors, then that's always one of the examples I'm bringing up, right? The picture here is from the first heart transplantation, right? And I think everybody would agree that it's very imaginable, and that 10 or 20 years before the first heart transplantation, if you would have talked to doctors and asked them, hey, what do you think about taking one heart from one patient, from one human, and putting that heart into another human? And not only doctors, but also the general population would probably, a large percentage of those would have probably said, hey, this is super weird, this is not normal, this is not supposed to be, it might even be impossible, right? And of course, heart transplantation now is a very common procedure that no one would want to miss. So it's very important to remember that technology advances significantly, and what we might deem impossible or very unlikely now will be the cutting edge of medical practice tomorrow, and then a standard normal procedure a couple of years after. Now, just to give you a bit of an idea, so a bit of background. So this is not a necessarily new topic. The idea of cryopreservation, or preserving yourself in some capacity to then be able to live on, or live a second life in quotation marks, in the future has been around for quite some time. Even Benjamin Franklin back in the day said something that is, of course, not technologically the same, but it's fundamentally very much the same idea. And of course, a large amount of people, mostly in the US, but more and more also in Europe and everywhere, where people start thinking about these, what might be possible in the future, have considered cryopreservation as one of the mechanisms how they might be able to live significantly longer than they currently can. And it's not only the millionaires and billionaires in Silicon Valley, but a while ago we ran a large study where we asked about 3,500 people in the US, in Germany, what they think about this topic. And there was this very, very strong questions, or this very strong answer, which said, if I could live indefinitely, even forever, I would. And 26% of that study said, yes, I agree with that statement. So more and more this topic is very much moving into the mainstream, where people just consider living longer as something they would personally like to do. And now, of course, biostasis, or cryonics, how it is sometimes called, is a technology that might be able to offer you a chance at just that. So just as a brief introduction, just in a nutshell, what is biostasis? And so it is a procedure that uses both very, very low temperatures, so somewhere between minus 140 degrees to minus 196 degrees, so really, really low, and specialized cryoprotective solutions to preserve the body in a state where then no further degradation is happening, where you basically keep the condition of the body as it was before you died, right? Due to cancer, due to whatever it might be. And now, at these very low temperatures, you can maintain this preservation without any future damage to the cells, to the brain, to whatever it might be, until medical technology has advanced enough to be able to revive the person. And of course, not only revive them, but at that time also to cure the underlying disease that led to the death in the first place. Let it be the cancer in this example. What's important to say that very much medical or future medical technology is required to do the revival process. While you can cryopreserve someone right now, and actually all the equipment, this is why we're around, you need future medical technology to be able to do the revival part. The good thing here is that no matter how long it takes until this revival is possible, the structure, both medically and also financially and also organizationally, is set up in a way that you can maintain this cryopreservation indefinitely. And in that way, just in quotation marks, wait around until you can revive someone. Now, briefly looking at the technology. First of all, so you see here on the left side one of the images that was used for an article that a newspaper or a magazine wrote about us. This is basically the furthest from how it's actually being done, as possible, right? So nothing gets frozen here, right? And we always try to not have these ice block pictures in our articles, because they're really not showing. They're really not at all indicative of the real process. And in fact, it goes even so far as that most or a large part of the technology and the medical equipment and so on that we use is exactly to stop any ice formation, right? To exactly avoid ice formation, and instead use a process that is called vitrification, that basically uses low temperatures and these specialized cryoprotective agent to bring the organs, and most important, of course, the brain, into a state where no ice crystals are forming, because ice crystals damage the cellular structure, and at the same time where this state can be maintained without any further damage indefinitely. So this is just a small detour around technology. There are other technologies as well that achieve this type of preservation. One is called, for example, ASC, aldehyde stabilized cryopreservation, which is a twist on this cryopreservation technology. And we are always following basically best practices, and that's also why the company is not called vitrification or ASC or whatever. It's called biostasis, which is kind of the umbrella term between bio and stasis, meaning biological material, putting it into stasis, into preservation, keeping it how it is. So we're always following the latest, the state of the art in regards to what our scientific board recommends as the best preservation technology. So how does that work from a practical standpoint? Let's say someone really how does it work from a tangible standpoint? So first of all, if anybody decides, I thought about it a lot and I really want to do it and I want to sign up for cryopreservation. In that case, with us, you have a simple online sign-up form, right? Just like you would sign up with any other, be it an online bank, be it whatever it might be. You sign up, then you're a member with us, right? You have a membership with Tomorrow Biostasis. Now, the second part is that now, should cryopreservation be necessary for you, there needs to be some kind of funding in place. Cryopreservation right now is relatively expensive, and I'll show you in the next slides how this funding, what funding mechanisms there are. So you need to put funding in place, and from that point on now, we regularly contact you, do medical monitoring, do organizational, logistical monitoring. So we would ask you, hey, do you want to tell us where you are? Should you move to another country, so that should anything happen, we're able to respond as quick as possible. Now, let's assume the unfortunate case that you're being diagnosed with a terminal disease or die in an accident or whatever it might be. Then we would dispatch one of our medical emergency teams, one of our medical standby teams to wherever you are, to be sure that the second legal death has been pronounced, which is legally necessary. Once your heart basically stops beating and legal death has been pronounced, at that time we would start this whole procedure with cool down and all of the things that I discussed a few minutes ago, to then preserve your body in a state without any future damage. That would then mean this cryopreservation, which is achieved at one of the cryopreservation facilities, some of which are in Europe, some of which are in the US, and we're collaborating very closely with one in Switzerland. And then now, as I mentioned before, at that point now we would maintain this cryopreservation, or more precisely, it's not actually directly done by us, but by a non-profit foundation to ensure long-term stability. They would maintain cryopreservation until medical technology has advanced so much that revival is possible. And then, practically speaking, you can continue your life or start your second life in the future. So that's the nutshell overview how it works. Just briefly digging a bit deeper into these steps, right? So for sign up, you just go to our webpage. Soon also will also be possible via app. The initial sign up is super quick, right? A couple of minutes. Then we'll send you a contract afterwards. That is the cryopreservation contract. And we'll send you all the information that you need for signing up with one insurance partner. We're working very closely with one insurance partner for funding and so on. Everything is done online. And then afterwards, we would recommend a few steps to increase the security of your cryopreservation contract, which would require some offline steps. Now funding. Funding is one of the important topics, of course, for cryopreservation. And funding here does not mean funding of us. We have a small monthly membership fee that pays for maintaining the equipment, training the medical teams, keeping the medical teams on call and all of that. So that is not the funding. Funding is for you just died and now a team needs to be dispatched and the whole process needs to be done, and then the cryopreservation needs to be maintained. How is that funded? Now, the absolute minimum that you can do for getting a cryopreservation right now, at least one that is anywhere, has any type of quality, is around 50,000 euros. With us, our cheapest cryopreservation starts at 100,000 euros. Our standard plan is around 200,000 euros. It's always a one-time fee for indefinite cryopreservation. I'll explain that on the next slides. And then you can go higher with flexible pricing as well. But regardless which plan or which tier you choose, all of these amounts are relatively high, right? So few people would like to pay these out of pocket, right? And just wire them to us or anything like that. And of course, luckily that's also not needed. So the money is used, around 40% of that money is being used for the actual procedure. So dispatching the medical team, all the equipment that is, the stuff that is being used up, the cryoprotective agents, and so on and so on. About 60% is used for maintaining long-term storage. This differs a bit between different plants, but this is kind of the ballpark. Maintaining long-term care in this case means once you're cryopreserved, you need to be able to be cryopreserved for practically indefinite time frames, so long until a revival is possible. And for that you need a relatively large amount of money. So let's look at funding in a bit more detail. And as I said, not everybody would like to wire 100 or 200,000 euros to us, or in fact around 95% of our members, our customers, do it in a different way. The most common way, I would say around 85–90% of our members do it like that, is via term life insurance, which practically means you take out life insurance. We're collaborating with the Bavarian Insurance Association, it's one of the top 10 German insurance companies, where the process basically works like that. So let's assume you're 30 years old, right? Now, until the age around of 65, 70, 75, it makes sense to protect that time frame with term life insurance, which basically means you take out an insurance. Should you die within that time frame, from the time you take it out until you reach the age, in this example, for example, 75, should you die in that time frame, the insurance pays out. The insurance pays out to us, and we're obligated, and we will use this money for your cryopreservation. Now, of course, so you might not die till 75, right? So the question is always, what happens if I die, at 80 or after the term runs out? And here it's very important to note that this is term life insurance. It's a risk insurance, which means it's like a car insurance, practically speaking, right? So should you not have a crash, not have an accident during a year where you paid for car insurance, you don't get anything back, right? And should you have a crash, next year where you didn't take out car insurance, then, well, the insurance doesn't pay out anything. So this is exactly the same thing here. This insurance can be so cheap, these monthly plans that always include our cost as well, so they're all inclusive. They can be so cheap because they are limited on a certain term. Now, the question again, of course, is, so what happens if I live longer? And in that case, there's a multitude of different funding mechanisms that can be used after, right? So first of all, you can extend your term life insurance, but the cost, of course, would go up in that case. You can have other funding mechanisms like whole life insurance, which is basically a savings plan or a pure savings plan. Then also you can technically fund your cryopreservation via having it in your will, in your last will, right? And a multitude of other things. And we're more than happy to discuss these topics and discuss pro and cons and so on and so on. One more thing that we want to note. So the fact that cryopreservation is so expensive is not something we like at all. So in fact, our team very, very diligently works on bringing the cost down in the future. And the idea here is that, let's say you take out term life insurance for the next, to protect yourself against, these off-chance cancers or accidents or whatever it might be, let's say for the next 30 years, then our hope and our goal, and again, something that we work actively on, would be that at that point, cryopreservation does not cost, let's say, 200,000 euros, but let's say 30,000 euros, so significantly cheaper. Luckily, everything that is expensive with cryopreservation gets significantly cheaper the more people sign up, the larger the organization is, the more people need cryopreservation, and so on. Also very important to note, this is not something that we can guarantee, right? So this is something we plan to do, we work on it practically every day, but this is not something we can guarantee. So the question, of course, that people always have is, so why should I sign up now, right? It costs term life insurance, so the amounts, let's say I should pay 50 euros a month, right? Why don't I do this in 10 years? And then I save 10 years, because now I'm relatively young, the likelihood of me dying is low, so why don't I sign up later? So and this is a topic that comes up all the time. What's very interesting here is that the cost difference between, and this is our example, let's say we compare a person who signs up at 30 and they want to have term life insurance till they're 75, and we compare that to a person who says, hey, you know, I wait 20 years, then I'm 50, and then I sign up until I'm 75. The price difference between these two people is 1% over the term. You know, one pays for, you know, what is it, 25 years, and the other pays for 55 years. But all in all, they pay the same amount with 1% difference. And the logic of that is that, of course, the insurance, the term life insurance company, they make their money by investing the money that you give them until you die, when they need to pay out. So they are highly incentivized to get money early so that they can invest it for longer periods of time. So practically their risk model works in a way so that signing up early is significantly cheaper on a monthly basis, even though you pay the same amount. You just pay it over a longer period of time, which in turn means you basically get 20 years of protection, this example, for free. Right? So cost considerations in most cases, there are some you know, odd ones out, but in most cases it is not a price difference to sign up early. The second point is, let's say you consider doing cryopreservation, or you consider signing up via term life insurance, funding via term life insurance in a couple of years. Now, in most cases, of course, that is doable, right? And there's nothing fundamentally wrong with it, except for it's not cheaper necessarily. And there is the off chance that you being diagnosed with any disease until you sign up, which then doesn't allow you to sign up later. So there's, you know, having a pre-existing condition like cancer, there's a certain group of diseases, of illnesses that would make you uninsurable. So in that case, you would not have the opportunity to sign up for term life insurance anymore. And last but not least, I already mentioned it, signing up for term life insurance today, and with us, of course, as well, and then once the contract is approved, at that point, the day after, you're fully protected. Should you die, you know, off chance, but should you die a month later, you're fully covered. The insurance pays out the full amount, and so on. And of course, again, probably, I'm not 100% sure what's the average age in the viewers right now, but arguably, let's say, you know, if you're 40 or 30 or whatever it might be, the probability of dying of cancer in the next couple of years is not super high. But then again, unfortunately, I personally know some cases of friends who wanted to sign up for and then never did, because, you know, a lot of people unfortunately procrastinate a bit on this topic, and then at least one of them was diagnosed with a terminal disease and died before they could sign up. Of course, this is probability-wise not super high, but it does happen, unfortunately. So in general, we would argue it makes sense to sign up. You know, if you have decided that you want to do it at some point, then why don't you do it on the next weekend, basically, right? You know, when you have a couple of hours, and it doesn't even take a couple of hours. And of course, if you have more questions, we're more than happy to discuss. All right, going one step further, let's say, you know, you're signed up, something happens to you. Okay, so how does it work now? In this case, as I mentioned briefly before, we're going to dispatch one of our medical teams. So we're based here in Germany. Germany is our core coverage area, and Switzerland and Austria as well. But we do cover the rest of Europe, at least Western Europe as well. If someone is on vacation in, let's say, some island or whatever it is, or in the US or in wherever it might be, then we do cover those as well, right? I mean, it's never going to happen where we say, hey, you moved outside of our coverage area for a vacation. We don't pick you up. So we always pick you up. We just currently do not allow signups, for example, from the US and so on. So we plan to have a relatively strong concentration in Western Europe. So we have one team here based in Berlin. You see some pictures of some of the equipment here on the left side. We are a partner. We're working with a team in Amsterdam, and we will soon also have a team in Zurich to cover then Central Europe with multiple teams, and always the team that is closest would respond. These ambulances and the equipment at every of these locations is fully equipped to do the full cryoprotection procedure on site, to not need to go anywhere specific, but be able to do everything on site, and then transfer the body to one of the cryopreservation facilities for further cool down, for the rest of the procedure. Now, last but not least, of course, storage is very important. So we're collaborating with one storage foundation or a long-term care facility in Switzerland. So this 120,000 euros that is being transferred to that foundation, that, as a reminder, is the 60% of the 200,000 euro plan. That money is being invested very, very risk-aversely by the foundation to be able to maintain cryopreservation out of the interest, out of the return from that money, and then in that way be able to maintain it indefinitely. This storage facility will be completed at the end of the year, potentially a bit earlier. It's currently in construction. I'm on the board, as I mentioned, of this foundation, so we have very close relations, of course. In the worst case scenario, should something happen to any one of our members before it's completed, then we're in close collaborations and talks and good friends with all the other international cryopreservation storage facilities, and we would reach out to all of them and then transfer the body to one of those foundations. But the primary storage for everybody from Europe here signed up with us is in Switzerland. And of course, all of that is non-profit, so that you can be sure that long-term storage is very safe and secure. Now, last but not least, once medical technology, as I mentioned multiple times now, has advanced enough, we would revive you, and then you can live on. I said it before as well, but there is significant research for that needed, right? So this is not something that will happen in 5 years. This is not something that will happen in 10 years. But then again, this is why we have these foundation set up that does biomedical research, that funds biomedical research. And again, the maintenance of cryopreservation can be done indefinitely. So even if research takes longer, that is fine. Because once you are in cryopreservation, no further degradation is. Time practically doesn't matter for you anymore. It doesn't matter. It can take 20 years, 40 years, 50. It can take 100 years or even longer. It doesn't matter. And we, as Tomorrow Biostasis, also do our part. We plan to and have already started, and will more in the future. We will fund research with part of what you pay to us goes into research. And then now, once you're revived, you can live your life. You continue your life, and any money that we did not need to spend for maintaining your cryopreservation will be returned to you to have money in the future. We also do have some other mechanisms. If you have, at the end of your life, you're very wealthy, or your net worth is X, Y, Z, then we do also have some organizations that we're currently building that will be able to transfer your money into the future, and so to speak, and then return it. And if you're interested in those, feel free to reach out. So lastly, what are the next steps, right? So we would, if you're interested in this topic, we would very much recommend to give us a call, right? To send us an email, to give us a call, to start the discussion, to ask any questions you might have. First of all, I already see a good amount of questions in the chat, but feel free to add on a few. If the questions run out, we end the webinar, so go ahead and put all the questions in that you would like to have answered, and I'll go through them one by one. But for the time being, as I mentioned, give us a call, send me an email. I'm more than happy to discuss with you one-on-one in person. And last but not least, also feel free to use the Calendly link that we just also posted into the chat to book a half-hour call with me to dig deeper. All right, now we go into Q&A. So go ahead and add more questions if you like to. So we're starting on the top. So the question is, hi, do you have plans for people who are older, for example, 70 plus, and or who are not completely healthy, maybe not able to get regular life insurance plans? Of course we do, right? So this is not only an add-on, this is standard procedures for us, right? So there's a plethora, as I mentioned before, of funding mechanisms. So all of which have ups and downsides. So this is always a personal discussion, right? So we do not do this currently on our webpage. You can sign up on our webpage as just membership. Just membership with us is 25 euros a month, and then the insurance is always added on. Should you not want to do it with insurance, we would then start a discussion with you. How would you like to fund your cryopreservation should it be required? So that can be that you give us like multiple people, like contact people from your family or whoever it might be, that we can then contact, who would then be able to, for example, wire the money should you die. It can be different savings plans, right? Things that are independent on how old you are and how healthy you are. It can also be just putting it into your last will, and so on. So please let's start a discussion, and we can discuss all the negative pros and cons of this funding mechanism. All the details, unfortunately, would be would be out of scope for this discussion, because it's in detail relatively complex, but it's absolutely doable and not a problem. All right, second question. How soon after death does cryopreservation need to start, considering that permanent brain damage happens rather soon, for about 4 minutes after supply of oxygen of the brain is stopped? So, first of all, it's right. So the cells in the brain and all the other cells as well start dying once they lack oxygen. It's important here to note that this is not a on-off switch thing. So it's not like oxygen is gone and then the cells are dead, right? And they can never be recovered. So there are 3 things that are important to note here. So first, cooling down stops this dying process. And the logic basically is that cell death is not a passive process. It's not like getting hit by a car where you didn't do anything and the car hits you and you were passive. Cell death is an active process. There are some details, but by and large, it's an active process. So it's more like an active recycling process that needs oxygen to do. So when you reduce the amount of oxygen consumption that the cell requires by cooling down, by basically reducing the metabolic activity and by that the oxygen consumption, you stop this dying process and it goes slower. And this is of course why we cool down. The second important point is that currently, yes, we would say if your brain didn't have oxygen for a while, you are brain damaged. In the future, it's very, very perceivable that parts or even all of that brain damage can be repaired. Because of course what we currently call damage is, for example, some cells got some holes in their membranes and so on, but everything that is very imaginably fixable. The last point is that once we apart from cooling, we restart blood circulation with chest thumpers and so on to again increase the oxygen availability for neurons, for the brain cells, to stop this dying process. And we give certain substances like medication that reduces the need and basically reduces metabolic load and reduces this dying process again. And of course, in any case, due to this future medical technology being around, some damage will need to be repaired. The only logic that we do is reduce the amount of damage that is happening. Next question would be, by the way, if you feel like I haven't answered your questions comprehensively enough, feel free to just add a follow-up and I'll come back to that question in the end. The cryopreservation facility that is being built in Switzerland, is there a hospital nearby it? Yes, there is. So the facility is very close to the Zurich airport and also to Zurich. And of course, Switzerland is also not that big in the first place. So of course, Zurich has a large amount of hospitals that are relatively close by. Then next question is, Alco uses M22 and the Cryonics Institute uses VM1. What vitrification solution does Tomorrow use? So we very likely will use a variant, an optimization of VM1. So the question in detail becomes complex. So different cryoprotective solutions have different advantages in different circumstances. So most likely, we're going to use in the future a variation of cryoprotective solutions based on these circumstances. So circumstances would, for example, be how many ischemic time, meaning time with where the body did not have an active oxygen supply, was there between starting the procedures and circulatory arrest, so your heart stops beating. Then how long will the transfer time be between perfusion with the cryoprotective agent, giving the cryoprotective agent, and the facility, and so on and so on. And as I mentioned before, aldehyde stabilized cryopreservation is using a third, basically glyceraldehyde, a third protective agent. So we will be more flexible on that and more let us guide by what a scientific board decides as the best option in certain circumstances. Next question would be, if tomorrow's clients deanimate before cryostorage in Switzerland is functional, will he or she be transported to CI or kept in a DUA in Europe until cryostorage is functional? So first of all, our average age currently at our facility with our customers is 34, 35. So the likelihood of anybody dying in the next year is pretty low. Nevertheless, of course, there needs to be a solution for that should someone die. In that case, we reach out to all the cryopreservation providers. There are, of course, also other storage facilities than CI and Alcor and Cryonics and in China and so on. So we would reach out to all the ones where our board decides that we feel like they're a trustful organization, right? Most of them we feel are in America, and then based on how much funding the member has available, we would choose an organization that accepts bodies at that funding level. It's important to note different organizations require different amounts of funding. Then next question is, do you provide services throughout Europe? How many standby teams do you have, and what kind of training or qualification do they have? So we do technically provide coverage and allow people to sign up all over Western Europe. So, but let's say someone signs up from the south of Spain or Portugal. We want to make it extremely clear, and we'll tell them clearly that we do not have a team in that country close by, right? So that's why our marketing efforts are focused on Germany, Switzerland, Austria, because there we have teams, as I mentioned, in Berlin, soon in Zurich, and one in Amsterdam via a partner. So it's important to note that we allow signups, but we make sure that they know that the team is not around the block. Apart from that, there are some countries that have local teams where we feel like they're relatively qualified. They're good teams. They do a good job. So if that is the case, we would collaborate with local teams for initial cool down while one of our teams is on the way, either by plane or by driving with one of the ambulances. So regarding training and qualification, so me being a medical doctor, I have a bit of a bias towards having medical doctors and surgeons and cardio technicians or perfusionists and so on do cryopreservations. So in our case, we would always, I can't necessarily promise it for the south of Spain or Portugal, but it's definitely the absolute plan that there's always at least one doctor involved. Usually it's doctors, perfusionists, EMTs, and people who are just trained for cryopreservation. It's important you can't send a doctor and just tell them, hey, I just called you up, can you do a cryopreservation? It needs specialized training. So for that here in Berlin, we have specialized training dummies for perfusion. We have training dummies for doing the cool down process and so on to regularly train our teams. Unfortunately, not as much as I would like to due to COVID over the last couple of years by now, or at least months by now. So once COVID dies down a bit, we currently do local trainings here in Berlin, but then we plan to also get larger trainings also again for the European teams and the local teams in other countries. Right, where were we? Tomorrow charges only one-time fee of 50, 100 or 200, if not through life insurance. There is no annual membership fee on top of that. So 50,000 we don't do at all. So we do 100,000 or the coverage amount that pays for cryopreservation. If let's say you want to pay upfront and you have some disease right now that will lead to your death, in that case, we would have an extra amount on top of that, about 50 to 75,000 euros as a last-minute sign-up. The other prices are always as long as you're a member with us, which is an additional 25 euros per month. So again, coming back to our model, how you sign up with term life insurance, let's take the 50 euros a month package, where 25 euros about goes to us, and 25 euros goes to the insurance, paying for a coverage amount of 200,000 euros that will be paid out should you need it. And that amount is of course flexible. As I said, in the future this might be significantly lower, hopefully, once we have reached larger scale and more people have signed up. Next question would be, let's assume the police wants to examine the dead body. Have you considered using virtual autopsy to safely examine the patient being cryopreserved? So, unfortunately, this is not up to us. So we, of course, do not do any autopsies or anything like that, right? So we would definitely advocate as much as we can with the coroner, with the perfusion, with the pathology, and so on, to do virtual autopsy and do not do anything that hinders the process or the quality of cryopreservation. But we can only advocate here. So this is not legally us who decides that. It is legally, the police or the pathologist who decide that what is necessary for these cases. But we do everything that we can that this does not happen, and the cryopreservation procedure is performed, as standard. Do you perfuse the? I lost the question. Do you perfuse the whole body or just head and straight freeze for the rest of the body, like Alcor does in cases of field cryopreservation? No, we do whole body perfusion and whole body remote cryoprotection. This is something that currently only we do. I'm not aware of any other organization that currently does that. There were organizations in the past who have done that, but to my knowledge, currently no one does whole body field cryopreservation, cryoprotection. I feel like the quality of that, and in a country like Germany, Austria, Switzerland, that is relatively geographically not super big, it's not like the continental US or anything, this is the best method. And I am aware of a few teams, also some in the US, who currently are setting up whole body field cryoprotection procedures and teams and so on, but to my knowledge they're not currently active yet. It seems to me, and I agree with that, that this is the way forward and the goal in the future for most organizations. Next question would be, universal life insurance is more expensive than term life, but it works for life, not just until the age of 85. What are approximate monthly costs for universal life compared to term life? So universal life, in other words, would be whole life, or in German, kapitalbildende Lebensversicherung. So basically a savings plan. So the prices depend very much on two things, how young you are and how much money you put in on a monthly basis, right? And how much time you basically have until you need, in our case, at least this 100,000 euros, or ideally even this 200,000 euros. So it depends very much. So mostly, I would not recommend universal life, whole life, or kapitalbildende Lebensversicherung. Okay, I'm not sure if you can still hear me, because we seem to have potentially, I don't know if there's some internet. It's really internet, right? No, it's not. All right, I think I'm back. Not sure what that was, but there was some buffering on my side. So I hope you can hear me. So coming back to the universal life insurance, maybe, by the way, some of my team members can test if you can hear me enough. All right, awesome, cool. So in the end, I would not recommend whole life insurance, and honest insurance brokers that I know also do not. So due to the current interest rates, whole life insurance products are not great. In that case, you should rather consider having some ETF savings plan or whatever it might be, which might be significantly more beneficial in the long run. I'm not a financial advisor by any means, so this is not something I can answer in much detail, but this is something that you should look into. Maybe there are other better options. The price is just to give you a ballpark number. If the package, let's say 50 euros a package for us, let's say you're 35, the prices are somewhere in the range of, let's say, 200, 300 euros a month, something like that. But it really depends. Right, how many patients cryo storage in Switzerland could accommodate? So the initial volume in Switzerland is for a couple of hundred. And then it's easy to expand the facility to store significantly more. So nowhere near this is going to be a problem anytime soon. And when I say anytime soon, I mean literally years and years. Let's assume I will move to Switzerland. Are there any suitable houses near the facility to live in? Very much depends on what you mean suitable. So yes, there are houses nearby, and there's, anyway, this is a metropolitan area around Zurich and so on. So yes, it's actually also a very nice area to live there. But suitable, of course, depends on what you're exactly looking for. Would Bavarian insurance company that cooperates with you organize accept North American clients to finance cryopreservations with Alcor and CI? So not only ours does not do that, but every insurance doesn't do that, because they can't do term life insurance or any insurance contracts across borders. So and that is due to KYC, Know Your Customer, and AML, anti-money laundering regulation. Technically, it would be possible, but it's not something that they do, because it's too expensive. So we have a setup where we can insure people through our setup with our insurance company internationally. So if someone wants to sign up with us, they can use our insurance partner no matter where they are. That's France, Italy, UK, wherever it is, also worldwide technically, even though, as I said, we only accept customers from Western Europe. But it is possible, but it's a special setup that allows that. In general, this is not possible. Next question would be, will Tomorrow do neuro preservation, which means just the head, including the brain, of course, as well? No, we do not. We do exclusively whole body cryopreservation. We do not do neuro. What are the research priorities of the foundation? So from a research priority standpoint, I'm a very practical person. So I'm significantly more interested in doing research projects that benefit the next patient that needs to be cryopreserved, right? So in the past, in this whole sector, there has been a lot of basic research been done, right, on cells and so on. Some of which, of course, is very interesting, and also long term will probably be implementable into the bedside, like day-to-day operations, but in my belief, not enough. So I very much focus, and we very much focus on very, very tangible things, right? And examples are, for example, improving the cryoprotective agents. As I mentioned, we will use an optimized cryoprotective agent for specific circumstances, for real life cases, not for lab cases, but for real life in the field cases, right? Then there are interesting research projects in improving how storage is being done, right? So currently, what you do so-called immersion storage, which is basically the body is stored in liquid nitrogen. But there are so-called ITS, intermediate temperature storage, where you have some advantages in regards to how storage is being done. So we're very interested in discussing research proposals for that. There's interesting research. It's more almost on the development side of improving the equipment that is being used for cryopreservation, improving quality metrics, and so on. So all very, very tangible things that are our focus. The first question is, so that's the next question. My first question is referring to the process of death. Is it possible a random medical team in a hospital carrying out resuscitation could treat a cryonics patient different than a normal patient? So it is possible, but it's unfortunately very unlikely, because resuscitation in a hospital has one goal, right? Bringing the patient back. Cryopreservation arguably has similar techniques, but a different goal. And once the patient, or once the hospital has decided, or the patient has decided that resuscitation is not, CPR is not necessary or not warranted anymore, at that point, they stop arguing their job is done to a degree, right? And to a degree also rightfully so, because there's other patients that need their attention. So in most cases, this is not going to work well. In some cases, it can work. But this is very much you know, a one like an individual's, you know, solution and discussion with the respective doctors and hospitals. Next question would be, what kind of biases could arise when the random medical team is knowledgeable of one's subscriptions? So there should be none, because the medical team is very much focused on keeping you alive. Cryopreservation only can legally start once this team has pronounced the person legally dead. I'm not aware of any circumstance where they do this either too early or too late or anything like that. So to my knowledge and to my belief, there is nothing that would impact that. If anything, it would be maybe a small upside, because you might argue, you might discuss with them if certain things can be done relatively quickly, if you can have access to the body quickly, and so on. So we would advise to we would advise everybody to tell your doctors, tell people, you know, if you're in the hospital, tell them about it, right? So there is definitely no downside to it. There's only a potential upside. So definitely be very open with it, and also feel free to get us or me involved, and so on. Second question, since biostasis is not yet established in Europe, there's a lack of social proof. Where do you see the opportunities, but also obstacles for further development of the interface of? Look, people, I'm among the first. Look, people, I'm among the first. Cryonics is not scary, and the protection of one's privacy, i.e., not wishing to let the public know that one has signed up for cryopreservation. So I'm not sure if I get the question exactly, but so in general, so at least my friends group and my colleagues group. So before I started out with this organization, so in the past I ran relatively traditional companies. Nothing, nowhere as unique as this and as moonshot-like as this, right? So initially I was slightly, worried almost that all my friends are going to say, hey, what the fuck, like, dude, like, don't call us anymore. Like, what the fuck are you doing? So this has not happened at all. So in general, we see a tremendous amount of openness towards this topic. As I said, also, I showed you the study in the beginning, right? So this is only the strongest indication, this, 26% saying, I would like to live indefinitely, even forever, right? If you weaken the statement a bit, then there's a significant larger percentage of people who are into and interested, right? So in the end, we, at least from our experience, don't see any negative feedback for people. So in general, I think it's totally okay to discuss with everybody, and most people are very, very open to it. I'm not sure if that was the exact question that you had. If not, then maybe post it again or rephrase it. Next question would be, membership fees are 25 euros per month or per year? 25 euros per month. So at that point, with 25 euros a month, we're definitely not the cheapest, right? So CI is cheaper, other organizations are cheaper on a monthly basis. But we're definitely also not the most expensive. So Alcor is $55 per month, right? So it's not, I don't know what the exchange is right now, but it's about half. So we're kind of in the middle ground. And this money is absolutely required. It's not money just goes to, whatever is being paid out to anybody. This is money that funds the maintenance, the on-call teams that are basically on standby, waiting until they need to be dispatched, right? It pays for all the equipment and improvement of equipment. It pays for the trainings and so on. It pays for research. It pays, of course, also for legal support, for community building, and everything that is necessary to make this thing work in the long run. So this is very much money that not directly is being used for you, but very much indirectly is exactly used for your benefit. So, and we have a larger explanation on our webpage under tomorrowbiostasis.com/pricing, how we use this money and what is being used with it, what is being done with it. Next question would be, not hearing you, sure, this was a small hiccup here on the tech side, but the next real question would be, you mentioned that one can pay 400,000 rather than 100,000 or 200,000. What do you get for the additional money or additional cost? So yeah, so the standard package where I would argue this has the best cost-benefit ratio is around 200,000 euros for cryopreservation. Below that, you have some disadvantages. They're not. It's not like this should not be done, but mostly these lower packages we have for 22-year-old students who say, hey, 50 euros a month, that's kind of affecting me. Can I have it a bit cheaper? And they start out with these plans and then upgrade later to the standard 50 euros a month plan once they get their first job or whatever. You can go higher, and arguably you can even technically go indefinitely higher. You can do 1 million, whatever you want, but there's some diminishing returns on that. Meaning the money would be used for example, let's say you die on some remote island somewhere in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, right? Should we have additional money? In that case, we could just throw money at the problem, meaning we hire a private jet, fly directly to you, get the medical team in the private jet, make everything going to you and coming back very, very seamless and easy and quick. This, for example, would not be able to do with the 200,000 euro package. But statistically speaking, the probability of dying on an island is not very high. Mostly people die in their hometown in a hospital. So then in some certain circumstances or some off-chance circumstances, it might be good to have some extra money for eventualities, like external legal challenges, whatever it might be. But all of these things have a bit of diminishing returns. The only thing that makes a bit of sense to have a bit more money available is, let's say over the next years we get significantly higher inflation than we have right now. Currently we basically do not have any inflation, but let's say inflation goes up like crazy. Then, and at the same time we are not able to bring down the cost of cryopreservation in the future, then at that point it might be beneficial to have a bit more money for inflation adjustment. But technically, as long as you're healthy, you can upgrade always these amounts in the future as well. Right, the next question is, could you place on Tomorrow channel the YouTube presentation of Dut's presentation during the Biostasis conference? So we have placed all the presentations. So we run just as a reminder, we run an annual conference, a scientific conference called Biostasis. Last year we ran Biostasis 2020. Now this year it will be Biostasis 2021, which will be in Zurich and also streamed online. So the conferences, we cannot put them online due to we ask every speaker if they want their presentation online or if they allow us to have them online, and the presentations who we got approval from, they are online. All the other ones unfortunately cannot be published. Yeah, the YouTube, the Google form is already being fixed, I think. Right, the Dutch presentation was one of the best. Fair enough. Yeah, due to speakers not wanting their presentation online. This can be due to having unpublished data. This can be due to having secret or some information that they don't want to be published too broadly. So unfortunately, we can't do this. All right, since we ran out of questions, I think, oh, wait, okay, we don't have, okay, so one reframing, thanks a lot for that. So the question is, being open versus privacy. In case of Larry King, public was kept in the dark for a long time if the preservation was successful, if it took place at all. Why? What could we learn there? So in the end, so we would never publish anybody who has done a preservation with us, right? So first of all, we feel like this is morally not correct to do that, or ethically not correct. On the other hand, it's also legally not allowed. So there's a high degree of privacy and the right to privacy for people who want to be cryopreserved, right? So I don't know why in that case it was kind of unclear if he was or even if he was not cryopreserved. So I think, to my knowledge, there's no downside to being open about the topic, right? So I would advise everybody who's interested in this topic and who wants to get involved in some capacity or whatever it might be, to be relatively open about it. Tell your friends, right? There's only an upside, right? If your friend knows that you want to be cryopreserved, should something happen to you, there's a higher chance that they're going to contact us or any other provider, right? In fact, if you sign up with us, we're currently in the process of building so-called welcome packages that everybody gets, where there are cards in there that you can give to your friends that say, hey, should anything happen to you, contact us, contact this organization, right? Because of course we're relying on you or your friends or your next of kin or your family telling us, at least that's one way. There's also through the doctor, and there's going to be an app soon, but one way of how we know that you need support and that you need potentially a cryopreservation is if your friends or your family and so on reaches out to us. And of course, if you sign up today and then should need us 30 years down the line, they will have forgotten that you told them about cryopreservation. So in the end, openness and reminding them, I think, makes a lot of sense, and to my knowledge has no downside or no significant downsides. So the second my team tells me that the form is live. Oh, well, there's another question. It's a dilemma, isn't it? A celebrity, e.g. Elon Musk, going public would be a big boost, but someone like that most likely we want privacy. So yeah, absolutely. So in fact, Elon Musk has in some presentation, he did an AMA on Reddit a while ago, and some person from the US asked him if he's in, what his thought of cryopreservation is. So he was relatively positive. He didn't say, hey, I signed up yesterday, but he was very positive about the prospect of it being possible down the line. But yeah, you're right. In the end, this is a bit of a private topic, even though a large portion of our customers comes from referrals. So it's very common for us that someone signs up and then they bring one or two friends who are also interested, because of course you guys know better who would be interested from your friends group in cryopreservation, whereas we do kind of broader marketing and so on. So we very much actively will ask and start asking and have asked in the past for people to recommend us, right? Because I mean, this is one of the important or the ways of how people learn about this topic, get in contact with this topic, and also build a bit of trust with this topic, because of course trust is very important here. Yeah, so it would be great if you could give us a bit information about what you would like to discuss in these events, if there's anything we should do differently. So if you have a couple of minutes, it would be great if you could fill our feedback form that was just posted again. Apart from that, as I mentioned before, very much we would ask you to reach out to us if this topic interests you. One of the biggest problem in this whole topic of biostasis and cryopreservation is that people who are really interested, they never do something about it, right? The day-to-day work always, takes precedent, and cryopreservation is one of these it's a very good example of a topic that is important, but not urgent, in this Eisenhower matrix of, important, not important, urgent, not urgent. So it's a typical topic of, important, as long as you're interested and want to do it, important, but not urgent. So unfortunately, it always gets, crushed by day-to-day topics, by calls, by whatever meetings and so on. So to kind of break through that a bit, if you want to sign up, reach out to us on the weekend or just sign up. And if you want to just discuss topics, then also just reach out to us and start a conversation. All right. In the end, thanks a lot for joining us. Talk to you soon. You will hear more about us, of course, with more webinars, with more information on our webpage and our YouTube channel. Let's keep the conversation or start a conversation, and talk to you soon. Thanks a lot and have a good evening.